So you like video games, huh? Well, do you like the music that goes behind them? Let's talk about the top 5 soundtracks of all time. What's up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Super Bowden Bros. Today, we're going to talk about the top 5 soundtracks for video games of all time. That's right, the top 5 soundtracks in video games of all time. Now, this is a very biased list. I'm going to let you know that these are my favorites. It may not be yours. There may be some in here that are your favorites, but please, just bear with me. Let me get through these. In my opinion, what I think are the top 5 of all time. So let's do this. Number 5 for me is Mario 64. The score was done by Koji Kondo, and this score just transcends all time, if you ask me. Just the other night, my dog was going nuts, and he was super annoying. I don't know what the deal was, but he was just going insane, barking really loud, whatever. And what did I do? I threw on the water theme from Dire Dire Docks on Mario 64, and he calmed down. So to me, when I think about Super Mario 64, I think about the Dire Dire Docks water theme, and of course all the other music that goes with it as well. And there's so many that are in there. But when it comes to classical themes that you can remember, Mario 64 stands the test of time, and in my opinion, is still one of the best third-person 3D games of all time. Number 4 is Red Dead Redemption 2. The music in this game is like no other. It's just classic. There's so many different, I guess you could say cowboy themes in this game. And there's so much that just pulls together in each moment. The music is placed perfectly at perfect moments in the game to where you know that it's something epic is going to happen or that something epic just happened. It plays on the heartstrings, it plays on the emotion, and not to give spoilers, but when in the final moments and when you start to ride away to meet Dutch in the song That's the Way It Is starts playing, that is one of my favorite songs in general actually now. And just to be honest with you, it made the game for me. It made the end of the game. So this is what soundtracks are supposed to do. Whether it's just the orchestra or whether it's a song, soundtracks are supposed to pull you into the emotion of the game. And Red Dead Redemption 2 does this throughout the whole game. As not to mention the Unshaken song as well. And that song is just amazing. But at each point in this game, there's always a cue. Even when you rest or sleep in the game, there's the beautiful, beautiful Western music that plays while you're sleeping. You literally could just sit there and fall asleep on your couch or in your bed playing the game, and the music would just soothe you. So Red Dead Redemption's 4 for me, and I think it's just amazing. Number 3. And number 3 is one that I had to stew on for just a little bit to make sure that it would be number 3 and not 2 or not 1. But number 3 I'm giving to Uncharted 4 by Henry Jackman. This score is just amazing. Throughout the whole game, the same Drake's theme plays in little variations that you wouldn't even notice at first, you know. Sometimes once you play a game, you don't really notice these things until later on when you go back and you play it again or you listen to the score and you're like, oh man, I didn't realize this was all through it. Throughout the whole score, this little Drake theme is playing throughout the whole thing. And it incorporates just very masterfully and very just beautifully throughout the whole thing. And it leads all the way up until the end. And it leads all the way to the epilogue, which you see. If you've played the game, you know. No spoiler. Well, spoilers, whatever. We'll give spoilers. But the epilogue, which plays the theme as well. So it's one of my favorite things that one of my favorite games that I've played, and one of the favorite soundtracks of all time that I just feel just warrants it. And like I said, this is my list. This is the ones that I listen to that I think are amazing. And Uncharted 4 is one that I wore out. And sometimes I still put it on repeat. I love it. Great soundtrack, great game. What else can you ask for? And number two is a big one for me. and that is simply Halo 4, score done by Neil Davidich. The Halo 4 soundtrack is so unique, cohesive, and just sets itself apart from every other soundtrack because it incorporates string instruments with the electronic sound, and it binds those together. And when that combines, it just makes an amazing sound that you can't recreate anywhere else. For example, the songs like 117, which is of course one of the classic Halo themes, but it also incorporates this electronic sound as well as Revival. The song Revival is right at the end of the game, but it centers around the electronic with the orchestra strings, and it just is amazing. Now, personally, this soundtrack is probably the one I have listened to the most. I have gone back, played the game just to hear bits and pieces of the soundtrack of, oh, where did that incorporate? Where did that go? But this soundtrack is also personal to me because it helped me through a personal struggle in my life, something that I was going through that was pretty rough. And I listened to this soundtrack, and it just helped me to cry out the tears and helped me to be a better person. And no, it doesn't have a message per se, but sometimes you just need music to help you just cry things out and to get better. And this soundtrack helped me just cry it out and to get better. So that is why Halo 4 soundtrack is on my number 2 of the top 5 list. So besides all the personal stuff, this soundtrack's just amazing in general. Everything that you see from the beginning, from Awakening all the way to Blue and versus Green, it's just this amazing soundtrack. So versatile, so different from everything else. And that's why it's number 2. Number 1, simple. It's the best soundtrack of all time. Can you hear it? Drums in the deep. That's right. Skyrim is number 1 on the top soundtracks of all time. Why? This soundtrack just transcends all video game soundtracks. Why? Number 1, because it has its own language in it. They specifically wrote a language for Skyrim, and the language is incorporated in the songs that they sing. The folklore, number 2. The stories that were written for all the little side songs that you hear. All the little stories that were involved in this story, this main story, is all put in there. So the time, the effort that was in there. Then, of course, the classic Norse sound to the soundtrack, which is just beautiful. I mean, if you have a problem listening to this soundtrack, I don't know what your problem is. I don't know. But this is a soundtrack that you can play for hours, and it can just soothe you to sleep. It can just make you feel better. It can help you think clearer, which it's done for me. I've used it while I'm studying. But the soundtrack for Skyrim is so different from everything else because there's so much time, thought, and love put into this soundtrack. It's a long soundtrack. It's a lot of stuff. But thankfully, they took their time with this soundtrack, and it's beautiful. Now, we all know that there's the classic moments where the characters mess up and they say the wrong things, but overall, the songs that are in this, the presence of the music is very strong and makes the game. So if you had this game, which the game is cool in general, I've played it myself probably about 8 times all the way through. But the problem is if you don't have music like this game isn't as good. And the music has made this game amazing. No matter how you feel about the composer or whoever, the music is amazing. And it's great. And if you haven't listened to it, I suggest you do. If you haven't played Skyrim, I suggest you do so. It will change your life. Now, you're like, well, what about all the other soundtracks out in the world? Well, there's some really good ones, and we'll get to those eventually in another video. But these are my top 5. I love these soundtracks. They've impacted me. They've made these my favorite games of all time. And I still listen to them to this day. So, let me know what your favorite soundtrack is. Drop down in the comments. Let us know what you think. And just let us know what your favorite is. Like, if you think Zelda Breath of the Wild is the better soundtrack, that's cool. Let me know what you guys think. But guys, thank you for joining us today in this video. Make sure you subscribe right here. And you follow us on Twitter and Instagram right down here. God bless you. Remember, always keep it nerdy.